At Baker's Pharmacy, care is what's most convenient for you. Care is being here when you need us. We're open evenings and weekends. Care is helping you save more. Most insurance plans and discount cards are accepted at your local Baker's Pharmacy. Care is saving you time by managing your prescriptions online. You can request refills, check order status, and more. Care is convenience that works for everyone. Baker's, a world of care is in store. Services and availability vary by location. Age and other restrictions may apply. For coverage, consult your health insurance company. Visit the pharmacy or our site for details.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Thank you so much for giving us the most precious thing you have, your time, as we continue to do what we always try to do, turn down the noise of the news cycle, get the information we can actually use to discern the times we live in. And Congress has been all over the news, so let's turn down the noise on that. We're going to talk to our buddy Eric Garcia, Congressional Correspondent, Washington Bureau Chief for The Independent, Chief Congressional Correspondent. We've had him on a bunch of times. We talk to him all the time. I want to take a second on how we cover Congress and what we think of Congress before we get into it with Eric, because here's the thing. I try not to just sit here and spout off my opinion on things. Now, it's my opinion, but I do try to learn things. I read coverage. I actually talk to people who cover things. So like something like Congress, there's people like Eric and others who I try to talk to. I'll ask them questions like, hey, what did this really happen this way? Or is this how this person really thinks? So when we talk about Congress, it's because you want to talk to people that cover Congress, not just people that sit and regurgitate whatever they see on the news. Congressional reporters are a special kind of reporting because they're in the hallways, they're in the tunnels, they're in the stairways, they're in the committee meetings. So when Eric says, well, Mitch McConnell felt like this, or Joe Manchin felt like this, or Chuck Schumer was in this kind of a mood, or A1C seemed agitated today, or whatever the case may be, it's because he was physically standing there and saw that, or he asked them a question, or he actually talked to them. There's about 150-ish, somewhere around that number, people that cover Congress every day actually in the building. And you need to have these people in your social media and in your rotation for your information. Why? Because of what I just said. They're actually there covering so much of things that cover Congress and Washington is just people from a distance just spouting off what they think through whatever filters they already have. That's why it's important to talk to people like Eric, because they're actually physically there in the building. And there's a lot of factors that don't even have anything to do with politics a lot of times that drive into this. He's going to talk about it on the show today, but how they get their committee assignments. Are they an appropriator or just a legislator? How do they get along with other people? Do they have a theory of how the Senate or the House should work that meshes with somebody else's, and that's how bipartisanship gets done? Not because they agree on the issue, but just because the functionality of how the House and the Senate, they think that needs to work. How dysfunction plays into that, and how the very old game of posturing nationally while legislating locally to try to send money back home is kind of the secret sauce to being a successful politician in national office when it comes to having a congressional seat or a Senate. Also going to talk about things like how your congressional office or Senate office is ran has a big deal to do with the Senate and the House in an election year. And then the other thing we're going to get into is how in an election year, we're about to see some generational change. We're seeing it in the House already. We're getting ready to see it in the Senate. Big changes coming, and the fact that we're going to, no matter who wins, whether it's Trump or Biden, we're going to elect a lame duck president, which is going to put a lot of pressure on Congress. Congress is the dysfunctional piece that really stirs the dysfunctional drink in our country right now. It just does. If you read almost all the Supreme Court stuff, the real hot button cases, if there was a theme to the Roberts courts, it would be Congress executive branch has way too much power because Congress doesn't reel them in. Spending and debit issues, that all goes through Congress. They have the power of the purse. And here's the thing about Congress that we got to keep in mind. It's easy to bang on them, but Congress, especially the House of Representatives and then the Senate a little less so, is the branch of the federal government we, you, me, the voting public, have the most control over because we're voting on the House of Representatives every 2 years and a third of the Senate every 2 years. We have the most control over them. And yet we very rarely seem to want to exercise that control and our own influence. So yeah, it's easy to bang on Congress. Yes, they deserve it. Yes, it's a cluster a lot of the times. It's a bonfire of vanities and we all like to point and laugh at it. But we have a representative government, and it represents us. And if we don't do anything to change how it represents us, we should probably stop laughing, stop pointing fingers, and start looking in the mirror and figuring out why we allowed such things to go on. In the meantime, though, there's a lot going on in Congress. And we're going to talk to Eric Garcia about all of it right after this.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Get an 11% rebate at Menards. Rust-Oleum Stops Rust Custom 5-in-1 Spray Paint lets you choose from 5 spray patterns with a twist of the dial. It protects indoor and outdoor metal and wood projects for long-lasting results and is available in more than 40 colors. Get started on your painting project at Menards, #1 in customer satisfaction among home improvement retailers according to J.D. Power. For more information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Save big money at Menards.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Okay, as you've heard tell, there's a lot of mess going on in Congress. They are back from a recess, and they picked up right where they left off. Does feel like things have maybe changed just a little bit. Let's go to our man inside Washington. He's the Washington Bureau Chief, senior correspondent for The Independent, does all kinds of great things. Has also wrote 1 book on autism, writing a second one. I don't know how he has the time to do so, but we sure do appreciate him. Eric Garcia, how are you, sir?
Doing all right. How you doing?
Hanging in there, buddy. It feels like there's been a shift the last 2-3 weeks. You tell me. I felt like when we left Congress before the recess, they passed all the aid bills. They went through with pretty heavy majority, pretty bipartisan support. The cranky caucus, the toddler caucus, whatever you want to call them, they kind of got put to the side, and everybody's just like, no, we're doing this. You stand over there and scream in the corner. We've come back this week, and it seems like that theme has continued. Does it feel like there's been a bit of a shift? Not that everybody loves Mike Johnson as speaker, but, at least like, okay, we're just done with the drama of it. He's going to be speaker for a while. Let's at least try to do something here.
Yeah, absolutely. There has been that feeling. I think the momentum shift really happened after Johnson had his kind of, pardon my French, road to Damascus moment. First off with Iran trying to hit Israel, and most of those rockets were blocked. And then reading the intel and having that whole spiel about how I'd rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys. That was the moment, I think, where Mike Johnson kind of recognized there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to make these people happy. The Clown Caucus, the Freedom Caucus. I mean, you can include the Freedom Caucus, though Green's not really in the Freedom Caucus. Massey's not in the Freedom Caucus. People forget that. But there was this kind of understanding, and I think that when that, and I wrote about this when the vote happened. Johnson also kind of weirdly did Hakeem Jeffries a favor when he allowed for the 4 separate votes on Ukraine, Israel, TikTok, and Taiwan, because that allowed the progressives in his conference to vote against Israel aid, but not sink the whole thing, and allowed them to air their grievances. So I think that basically what happened was Johnson, for better or for worse, kept his word to everybody, and it worked out. So now we come back, but the issue is, and I said this, I tweeted this out last night, is that Green made a big stink when she filed her motion to vacate in late March, and now she has nowhere to go. Nobody wants to go through with the motion to vacate. Nobody wants to have that vote. Democrats said this week, Hakeem Jeffries and Catherine Clark and Pete Aguilar said they are going to vote to table it. So, but because she's made a big stink about it, she can't not pull the trigger. But if she pulls the trigger and it fails, which it looks like it will, she has egg on her face. So it seems that Johnson has figured out basically how to govern by coalition with the Democrats and with a large majority of the Republicans.
How much of a jam? Like, she can't back off it, right? She's got to go through it just for her own fundraising and everything else. She's going to bring it forward. Hakeem Jeffries has already came out and said, no, we're going to table this thing. We're going to kill this as soon as it comes up. There's certain factions that will blame Mike Johnson for that, but it does feel like most people are just like, we want this to go away and we don't want to deal with it. And she's just trapped into it. And all this has done is put her in the corner. I know Macy came out and had that ridiculous presser with her. She just doesn't seem to be getting it. We had that great photo. I don't know who took the picture. I'd give him credit for it, where the entire press corps is all around Marjorie Taylor Greene on the steps, and you literally had Miss USA standing at the top of the steps, looking down, smiling, and laughing at the whole thing. Yes. I was like, what a perfect picture of what's going on. This is all attention-seeking stuff, but it feels like Congress has finally kind of been like, okay, this is all attention-seeking stuff, and it's going to hurt all of us, and there's an election in a couple months. It feels like she's really marginalized now.
Absolutely, and I think that that's absolutely intentional. A perfect example of this. Yesterday, there was a vote on the for anti-Semitism on campus, and it was sponsored by Representative Mike Lawler, who is a Republican from a district that voted for Joe Biden. Republicans really wanted to keep the focus on that, but then, of course, Green had her whole press conference. So that kind of obfuscated the vote, even though it passed with a lot of Democratic support. But there really is there is a feeling of exasperation with Green and with Massey and Gosar, where it's really just kind of like enough. And I think it's important to recognize, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, given how mean I was to him when he was speaker. Weirdly enough, I think Kevin McCarthy kind of did a good job reining Green in. and telling her not to just do all of these harebrained things. Because and telling her, if you want to build power, this is how to do it. And ironically, Green has more of a legitimate policy objection to Johnson than Matt Gaetz did with McCarthy, because Gaetz just filed that motion to vacate after they passed a CR. Johnson passed 12 spending bills, basically an omni, split in half, and the Ukraine aid. But, even a lot of the Republicans who voted to get rid of McCarthy, like Tim Burchett, Nancy Mace, Matt Rosedale, don't seem interested in doing this. She really is a marginalized figure at this point.
That anti-Semitism vote, or whatever you want to call the campus bill that they passed, that one was really interesting. Punchbowl talked about it at length this morning. If you don't read Punchbowl News, you need to. It's one of the best things you can read for yourself. They went into detail. The Democratic leadership was all on board for this thing, all of them. Clark was in it. Aguilar was on it. Hakeem Jeffries was on it. But there's a feeling that that's also put them in a little bit of a bind. So at one stage, you've got the Republicans who've got their crazy caucus and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Masseys and them to deal with. What about the Democratic side? Do they have a rift with their progressive wing? Are they having problems with them right now? The squad's kind of been a little quieter before this protest stuff kicked up. I know what the media and the normal suspects are pressing, but inside the caucus, is it tension? Is it problems? Or is it just, well, we know what this is and we have to kind of stay between the lines, keep everybody happy here? There
is really, I think, I don't want to say, it hasn't boiled over yet, but it is definitely simmering. And I should say that it doesn't fall, because I think that a lot of the progressive squad says that, well, the AIPAC opposition to progressives is rooted in anti-Black racism. And there's some truth to that, but not a lot of truth, because, for example, Ricky Torres, who's Black and Latino, is a big supporter of Israel. And Hakeem Jeffries is also, House Minority Leader, likely to be the first Black Speaker of the House, is a major supporter of Israel. And then conversely, you have a lot of Jewish Democrats like Sarah Jacobs and Becca Balint, who voted against that the campus bill, the anti-Semitism bill, the protest bill, whatever you want to call it. And they're both Jewish. And then Jamie Raskin, also who is Jewish, who represents the suburbs of Maryland, the suburbs of DC, which are very Jewish, supports the ceasefire in Gaza. So it doesn't fall along neat identity or ideological lines, I should say. But there definitely is a rift. And this is something, and Andrew, you've seen me say this all the time. The difference within the GOP is mostly about tactics. Most of them agree they want to restrict immigration, they want to cut taxes, they want Trump reelected. Democrats have legitimate policy differences, but like with Republicans, it's just like, are we going to impeach Joe Biden? Are we going to do this with or without the rule? Democrats, there are legitimate policy differences on Israel, on foreign policy, on taxes, on energy, but there really is starting to, I think, see this simmering tension boil over. You saw it with AOC and Jared Moskowitz. They got into a little Twitter tiff last week because of Bernie Sanders, and Jared Moskowitz liked a tweet that said for AOC to F off. So that tension is there. And, 55 Democrats voted against the Israel aid portion of the foreign aid bill. A large amount, I think, of Democrats voted against the campus bill yesterday. So it's there. And that's going to be a real test for Hakeem Jeffries. It's probably going to be the first big test for him, because for the longest time, he's been able to keep everybody in the tent, and he's been able to do what Nancy Pelosi did and just keep them as a block. So that's going to be a real test for him.
Yeah, Hakeem Jeffries, he's had a little bit of an easy job, like you said, because he can just stay out of the way and let the Republicans look like chaos. So he's had a bit of an easy ride since he's taken the reins here. But now he is in the minutia of it. He's having to pick his spots, like just this week, saying we're going to come out hey, we're going to make sure that this tabled motion to keep Mike Johnson as speaker, we're going to make sure that dies. Not everybody in his caucus was thrilled at that. They would have rather do it. He's made a tactical decision there. He's dealing with things like the squad. He's setting up some legislation between now and election day, 180 odd days, whatever we're at right now.
186.
How's he looking tactically? What's the feeling of not just keeping everybody in line, because that's one part of being, a potential speaker and a majority minority leader, whatever role you have. That's one part of it, is just keeping everybody in line. The other is pushing forward stuff that keeps everybody happy. Where's he at on that?
I think at this point he is trying to figure out what that medium is. I think that one of the things that both Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden were incredibly good at doing, and Joe Biden obviously still good at doing, is finding the median of wherever the Democratic Party is and going with that route. And I think that Jeffries is trying to figure out what that looks like. So, for example, they had the tax bill earlier this year that had the expanded child tax credit. Even though a lot of progressives didn't like it because of the corporate giveaways, most Democrats liked it because it had an expanded child tax credit. You're going, by virtue of him being minority leader, minority leaders can't really force vote like the way they do in the Senate. Being in the House minority really doesn't have a lot of perks. So at this point, what he's really focusing on is, I think, the power of the pulpit and messaging and keeping everybody in line. He's famous for saying we're a coalition, not a cult. So as of right now, I can't really say what he's focused on, what policy thinks he's focused on, because I think a lot of it is contingent on, can he get the necessary votes? They only need a few seats to flip. And if the New York Democratic Party does its job, and if the California Democratic Party does its job, he'll be Speaker of the House next year.
Is that the sentiment? Eric Garcia joining us. Politically, we've kind of been on the line of, the Democrats will probably get the House and lose the Senate just because of the map. We'll talk about the Senate in a minute. What does it feel like inside of Congress? We know we've had a rash of Republicans kind of bailing ship here. What do the members think? How do they feel this is going? You have certain members coming out and saying, well, our only legislative goal is to get Donald Trump elected when you're a Republican. That sounds like a bad idea, but he said it anyway. But there's a lot of them that feel that way. How does it play? How does the actual members feel this election is going as far as whether the House is going to flip or not?
I think a lot of them feel that. I think a lot of Republicans feel demoralized. I mean, one of the things that's important to look at is a perfect example of this, I think, is Kathy Morris Rogers. She's, for those who don't know, she's the Energy and Commerce Chairwoman. And Republicans, you know this, Andrew, so I don't need to tell you this. Republicans cap the amount of years that you could be a chair to 4 years. McMorris Rogers helped usher through the bill to ban TikTok through unanimous support. She was former conference chairwoman. She had, if she wanted to, another 2 years as chairwoman or ranking member, and she bailed. In the same way, you saw Kay Granger, a Republican from Texas, who was appropriations chairwoman, announced that she was not seeking re-election, and as soon as the 12 spending bills were done, she said, okay, I'm done as appropriations chair. And now she's like, okay, that's Tom Cole's job. There really is a feeling of heading for the exits, and I think a lot of it is there are still a lot of hard feelings from October, and there are a lot of hard feelings. There's a feeling of, if you see members of the majority party heading for the exits, that usually is an indicator that they feel they're going to lose. And also, I think it's important to see not just the number of people who are leaving, but the types of people who are leaving. So Patrick McHenry, the man who was Speaker pro tempore, chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, so therefore very close with Wall Street, is saying adios. We saw Mike Gallagher, the chairman of the China subcommittee, say, I'm done. I don't want anything to do with this. Even cranky old Ken Buck said, I've had enough of this. So it's the type of members, the members who want to get stuff done, the ones who don't gesticulate and grandstand, who are staying in, and it is who are leaving, and it's the ones who like to grandstand, who like to posture, that are staying in. Chip Roy's not leaving. Thomas Massey isn't leaving. Margie isn't leaving. We'll see what happens with Lauren Boebert in her primary, but she doesn't want to leave.
Is there a feeling that on the Republican side that they're just stuck with those people? When you see the more moderate people or the just get stuff done folks, it's not that they aren't, maybe pro-Trump or whatever else, but they at least want to legislate in some respect, whatever spectrum they fall on. Does it feel like that there's just no hope on the Republican Party side of how to deal with people like that? They seem like they've got the Democratic Party's got some radicals that they got to deal with once in a while, but they still seem to function. This seems like it's just shutting down the whole GOP caucus over and over and over again. The only reason it's not going to this time is because the Democrats are stepping in. That, for somebody that's not political, that just looks like chaos. And that's a bad look.
It does. And I think most Republicans, even though they won't openly admit it, but they realize the get stuff done caucus, or the ones who will actually want to govern, just saying nothing of the Republicans who are in districts that voted for Joe Biden, so they need to get stuff done. They implicitly kind of admit, they implicitly kind of, with a wink and a nod, say, yeah, we're basically in a coalition government. Garrett Graves, who was Kevin McCarthy's chief negotiator on the budget, on the debt ceiling negotiations, said in, I think, December, we basically are in a coalition with the Democrats. There's nothing we could do. The fact that, any time they vote to have a suspension of the rules, and Andrew, you know this, so I'm just going to explain it really quickly for the plebes. In order for a bill to happen, to get a vote, a rule on it needs to pass that describes the parameters of how the debate is going to be, what amendments are going to happen. At this point, almost no because you have the radicals who will just vote to sink a rule, which never happened. Basically, now the only things that could pass are ones that you don't need a rule, which requires 2/3 of a vote. And that requires the Democrats. So Republicans, as much as they may not want to admit it, they kind of resigned themselves to saying, we're in a coalition with the Democrats. Let's do what we can, and let's just move on. And let's hope we can. They say they hope that they can add to their majority, but I think that they also recognize, just structurally, just given the fact that they got lucky in California and New York, because the California Democratic Party and the New York Democratic Party were lazy. They recognize that they probably are going to lose. On top of that, you got folks like Juan Ciscomani in Arizona who got lucky. So there's just this feeling of. And then I think it is Chavez de Raymer, who also got lucky just because of an internecine feud with the Democrats. There's just kind of this feeling of, okay, let's take our licks and let's move on.
Eric Garcia joining us. Let's talk the Senate real quick. This really was, when they pushed through these aid bills, this was really Mitch McConnell's last checkbox he wanted before he went out the door in a lot of ways. This didn't get as much coverage as it wanted to, but this was really what Mitch wanted to go out on. This was a big deal for Mitch McConnell and Schumer. This is one of those things where they get, they don't like to talk about it, but they got some overlap and friendship involved there, and they know how to get this kind of stuff done.
Yes.
This very much was a Senate. We paid attention to the House, but the Senate really drove the bus on a lot of this. Like, hey, we're going to send it to you. Don't screw it up and pass it.
Yes.
Talk about the Senate side of this for a minute.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that it's important to recognize, even before, when there was the border negotiations where they were going to try to add restrictions to immigration in exchange for Ukraine aid, McConnell was the one who dispatched Senator James Lankford, who is the conservative senator, Republican senator from Oklahoma, to do the negotiations. But I think when McConnell, because you remember they began then in kind of October, December. I think McConnell hoped that they could get this done before the holidays, because he recognized that as soon as Trump started winning primaries, he would be the de facto head, and he wouldn't want this because he wanted to keep it in as an issue. And then I think McConnell also recognized that he was basically pleading with Republicans. He's like, because he recognized, look, if Trump wins, we're not going to be able to pass this because the Democrats are not going to want to do that, and give Trump basically give Trump money for the wall, restrictions to asylum, and quote unquote catch and release. He's like, take the win. But because Trump and to another extent Mike Johnson basically sank the bill, they were ironically, it forced them to pass, just the foreign aid without it. But McConnell always wanted this to be his defining legacy. McConnell, people have focused on, last year, if you remember, before he started, he had those episodes where he froze up. If you remember, he took a pretty bad fall at the Waldorf Astoria, and I think he cracked his ribs or something like that. He was already in the twilight, and he already, I think, understood that he didn't want to be minority leader or majority leader under Trump. He didn't want that headache again. So this was really his last gas. And again, to your point, he, once House Republicans and basically almost all the Senate Republicans killed that deal on the border, he was just like, okay, fine, we're just gonna do a standalone and tell JD Vance to kick rocks. This was him basically said. This was his last gas. And I went to the press conference he had last week, right before the vote. And he was pretty, for those who don't know this, McConnell is not a very candid person. John Boehner used to say he keeps his emotions in like a lockbox. He basically took a shot at Tucker Carlson and the isolationists in the GOP. And he basically said, look, this is not, we're going to do this and forget these people. But this is what he wants. I remember I joked with a friend of mine. I said, if McConnell actually gets Ukraine aid through, they should build a statue to him in Kyiv, just recognizing just how difficult this was. But you're right. This absolutely was a McConnell Schumer special. I mean, he had some of the internationalists in the Republican Party, like Mitt Romney, get behind it. But really, this was Chuck Schumer, and this was the Chuck and Mitch show.
This leads us, Eric Schumer. See, now I'm messed up. Eric Garcia joining us. This leads us into a little bit of projection, though, because Mitch McConnell is going to be leaving. He's already announced he's stepping down. Mitt Romney's going to be gone.
Yes.
The Republicans, just by the math and the map, they could still screw it up, but it would really take something special because things like West Virginia, there's just no way. They're going to probably get the Senate one way or the other. Yes. There's going to be new leadership in the Senate, one of the three Johns or somebody else. Yeah. Schumer's still going to be there, but this is probably going to be his last run as a minority leader. I don't know how much longer he's going to want to hang around. And there's a lot. We're making a lot of fun of the House right now, but the Senate's about to go through some things because on both parties, there's a lot of younger people coming up that are going to start wanting those leadership slots that have been locked up for 15, 20, 25 years.
Yes.
Talk about that for a minute, because put all the politics aside. Just functionality, we've learned from the House that sometimes you just need some people upstairs that at least know how to put stuff through, whether you like it or not. They at least functionally know how to run the place. I don't know that they functionally know how to run the place in the House GOP right now. When McConnell leaves, that is going to be a sea tide on how the Senate functions, both when he was in the minority and the majority leadership. Schumer and him are of the same mind functionally on how to run the Senate. That's why they can work together. Talk about that part of it, because I think that's something we need to really watch for going into the new year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I should say is, even before McConnell made his announcement, he was already losing his grip. If you remember on the conference, if you remember right before the border deal tanked, like they start like McConnell's enemies started leaking stuff to other news outlets about what he was saying. Even Romney started being critical of him. And then, if you remember last year, for the better part of a year, Tommy Tuberville basically blocked military promotions, even though McConnell didn't like it. But he functionally couldn't do anything. If you remember in 2022, Lindsey Graham tried doing that 15-week abortion ban. He basically went around McConnell. The thing of it is that, yes, McConnell was an incredibly effective minority leader. He had his merits as a majority leader, mainly just confirming judges, but he really didn't know how to he really couldn't pass much legislation. But what you're seeing now is that you're seeing that whoever succeeds McConnell is not going to be able to have that kind of iron grip on the GOP, the Senate GOP, that McConnell had for years, because even McConnell was losing it. And on top of that, you're not going to have somebody who knows all the procedural tactics in the body, where the bodies are buried, and how to use all these little tricks to gum up the works with Democrats. So as of right now, John Barrasso of Wyoming has said he's going to run for whip. So that takes Barrasso out of it. But that basically leaves John Cornyn, senator from Texas, Republican senator from Texas, and John Thune, who was whip for many years, and John Thune, who's the current whip. Both of these guys, I should say, Thune was a congressman for a long time. He knocked off a Senate Majority Leader in Tom Daschle. He's very much a very staid guy. John Cornyn has a lot more money behind him, the Texas oil money, and he knows how to do procedure. He's on Judiciary Committee. He passed the gun bill with Kyrsten Sinema and Chris Murphy. These two guys, I mean, he very much was a Bush Republican in Texas when there still were Bush Republicans. They still kind of know how to govern. The question is how they're going to do this without having the training wheels with Mitch McConnell, and if they're going to be able to control your Josh Hawleys, your J.D. Vances, your Tommy Tubervilles, your John Kennedys, with the same kind of acuity that Mitch McConnell had. I don't think they're going to be able to do that, because now there are so many right-wing media outlets. They could tweet about it. They could go on Newsmax. They could go on OAN. They could go on Steve Bannon's show, and they could completely subvert things. So there's no longer those kind of uniform chains of command like there used to be. For better or for worse, Democrats are able to get their folks to fall in line. If you remember, only 3 members of the Democratic caucus voted against the foreign aid bill. It was Welch, Sanders, and Merkley. Even though a lot of Democrats don't like what Netanyahu's doing in Israel, they basically fell in line because they're like, well, what are we going to do? We got to pass Ukraine aid. So it's going to be very different under the Senate Republican caucus. And as you said, there's not going to be a John McCain. There's not going to be, if Trump wins, let's just say Trump wins, because polling shows right now he's in the lead. There's not going to be a John McCain. There's not going to be a Bob Corker. There's not going to be a Mitt Romney. There's not going to be somebody who reins in Trump or who says, no, Mr. President, we're not doing this. Lisa Murkowski is going to be there still. Susan Collins is going to be there still. But they don't want to talk about Trump. They don't want to defy Trump.
Now, Eric Garcia joining us. What people call the squishy middle from both parties, that's the part of Congress that's really going to change, especially in the Senate this particular election cycle. You know, Joe Manchin's going to get replaced by Jim Justice. Jim Justice is going to win that race by 30 points at least. So there's your moderating force that would kick back against both sides. He's gone. Mitt Romney's going to retire. He's not going to be there anymore. He's one of those that would fight both sides from the middle if he had to and didn't mind it. Sinema's going to be gone, kind of a wild card aspect. She's gone now. There's a lot of those people where you could just get 4 or 5 people together and do some stuff that are going to be gone. Not just the switching of who's got the majority now. just a lot of those kind of folks that would, okay, well, I'm willing to give on this and do it. Those folks are going to be gone, not just the leadership, just rank and file. And that means people like the JD Vances of the world are going to have more, say Cotton's not going to be able to be sidelined because nobody's going to have the sway to overtalk him. You're just going to get those people louder now with those middle folks gone, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. I mean, and that's not to say that there are that everybody's gone. Like, I mean, you still have Todd Young on the Republican side who can work with Democrats with an infrastructure bill. You still have Bill Cassidy. You still have Lisa Murkowski. On the Democratic side, you still have folks like John Tester, Patty Murray. You still have Chris Coons. Even someone like a Chris Murphy, as progressive as he is, he can still work with it. You still have someone like Amy Klobuchar, chairwoman of the Rules Committee. You still have those folks. It's just going to be they have smaller margins. There's a joke in Washington, and you know this joke, Andrew. There are three parties, really. There's Democrats, there's Republicans, and there's appropriators. These are the people who, once everybody cries it out and is put down for a bottle on a nap, they go behind closed doors and they write the budget. Those folks are still going to be there. They're just going to be fewer and further between. And what I think is also going to happen is that the folks who really who get stuff done, they're going to need to outwardly present as hyper-partisan posturers. But then, in order for them to get the stuff done they really want to do. I think a perfect example of this, look, everybody made fun of Katie Britt after her State of the Union response. But what a lot of people missed was in the most recent round of spending bills, she sits on appropriations. She brought home millions of dollars for Alabama, which is one of the poorest states, but she brought home money for roads, for HBCUs, for community centers. So what you're going to see now is more and more the people who want to get stuff done are no longer going to be able to campaign or posture themselves as folks who, quote unquote, get stuff done. They're going to have to be hyperpartisan in order to pass this, they'll do their grandstanding and things on the floor, and then they'll wrestle over the budget.
Yeah, that's the old Robert C. Byrd method of you rail against Washington while making sure Washington sends you lots and lots of money back home. That's the trick to being a successful U.S. senator and a congressman, for that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, congressman, the other thing about a congressman, this is a little off topic, but we need to hit it since I brought it up. One of the biggest ways to make sure you get reelected is a congressional office is functional and people can get a hold of it. And people don't talk about that a lot. But you hear about this on the Hill reporting and stuff, like, which Congress people and which senators, whose offices run right. If you call Joe Manchin's office to this day, even with him retiring, you're going to get a phone call back.
Yes.
There's there's a lot. If you want to stay successful in Congress, your office has to function so you get word of mouth. That's one of those little political things that people don't really talk about, but in an election year makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people thought that Madison Cawthorn got yeeted because of the cocaine and orgies comment. Really what happened, and this, is that he abandoned his old district and tried to run in a different district. He closed his old offices so that a lot of people in Western North Carolina, which, as is a very poor part of the state, couldn't get their VA claims handled, couldn't get their Social Security checks handled, couldn't get an expedited passport. Whereas, I joke, I all the time that I'm like, look, say what you will about Sheila Jackson Lee and about how much she abuses her staff. If a constituent in Houston, Texas needs an expedited passport, they're going to get it tomorrow. Say what we talked about the squad a little bit earlier. Summer Lee just won her primary. And what was interesting is that as much as people wanted to make it about Israel, her staff told me, basically, we won this because we did casework. With pipes, with lead pipes, with getting money back, with bringing back money in the spending bills, with VA claims. That was how she won. Conversely, another person, say what you will, what you're seeing now with Lauren Boebert, our friend over in Colorado. One of the big challenges and one of the reasons why she's in trouble is the reason why she bounced from her old district is that her old district didn't like her. They thought she was focused too much on Washington and getting on national TV in between going to go see Beetlejuice. And the other, it was, now she's going to another district where she, I had to say it. And the other is now she's in a completely different district where she has no ties, where she has no no connections. Whereas, say what you will, you talked about Joe Manchin. We could also talk about about other Republicans who Elise Stefanik will vote no against spending bills and then brag about how she got a lot of money for northern New York. The folks who get reelected, Democrat and Republican, are the ones who take the case calls, are the ones who get help the blue hairs get their Social Security checks, are the ones who help who make sure that kids' education claims or Pell Grants are handled. Say what you will about AOC, the reason why she's going to win her primary overwhelmingly is if you call her office in the Bronx, you're going to get a phone, you're going to get a call back. Another reason why, so that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, Eric Garcia joining us. Okay, we talked about margins in the House. Let's say the Senate does go Republican, which just mathematically and geography is what's really driving this. It's not even political. What's the functional difference between 51 seats and 53 or 54? Because you have some people's like, well, that's not going to be a big deal. But then you've had a couple of the senators come out lately and say, no, that's a huge difference between 51 and 54. Functionally, what's really at stake here in these seats? Because it could be 50-51. It could be 54-55 on the outside if a couple things break a certain way. What's the difference in that number, though?
I cannot stress how big it is. So let's say, for example, Joe Biden wins re-election. The Democrats keep the House and Republicans get the Senate. Let's say there's 53, 54 seats. Let's say Ohio, Montana, and Wisconsin flip, or Nevada flips, or Maryland flips, which is entirely possible. That means it's all that much more difficult for Joe Biden to get judicial confirmations or cabinet officials to get confirmed. That makes it much harder. That allows Republicans in the Senate to play hardball with Democrats on the budget and force Biden's hand on some spending cuts. Biden, for better or for worse, has even though Republicans control the House, because of the tight margin in the House, he's basically rolled the Republicans on a lot of stuff. He hasn't had to give any major policy concessions. A Republican Senate could block a Democratic budget from the House. And then conversely, what happens, we were talking about earlier with whoever succeeds Mitch McConnell. If you've got a few, because a lot of these folks who are running in these Senate races, particularly in Ohio, particularly in Montana, are very MAGA. And they could also conversely gum things up for a Republican majority and, make Mitch McConnell's life hell or make John Thune or John Cornyn's life hell. And then let's not even dismiss the fact that, let's talk about if Trump is president, which is very likely, incredibly likely for her to believe the polls right now. That means that these scalawags or these rapscallions can just appeal to the president, go on Newsmax, and then Trump, and then they could gum up the works for leadership or for the grown-ups. Or they could start banging it, or for example, if they want to do something through reconciliation on immigration, or on the budget, or on keeping the Trump tax cuts, they could easily do that, even if there are a few Republicans who don't want to do reconciliation. There are tons and tons of ways that a 51-seat majority for Republicans is night and day than 53 or 54.
Yeah, Eric Garcia. I want to end this by kind of going back to where we started. It's an election year. We've talked about the generational changes that are coming to the Senate. We're already watching it in the House because Hakeem Jeffries has already stepped up, even though Nancy Pelosi is still there, but she relinquished leadership. One of the ways you get generational changes is when you don't have steady leadership at the top. I think one of the things that's really not been talked about enough is no matter which way this election breaks is we're getting a lame duck president.
We are, yes.
I don't think enough people understand in Congress, in politics, in the way Washington is power structured, whoever wins, whether it's Trump or Biden, the second they win the new election cycle and the new power struggle is going to start immediately because they're both automatically lame ducks. I don't think there's going to be any grace period for either one of these two. And I think that's going to speed up some of this political and generational change we're talking about a lot faster than people are thinking about it. And I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact of the matter, and to say the fact that whoever wins is going to be incredibly unpopular, is going to be an incredibly unpopular and an incredibly polarizing president. We talk a lot about these things called the double haters, people who hate Trump and Biden. That is, and it should also be noted, Trump and Biden came into power came into the leadership of their parties under very different circumstances. Trump basically wiped out an entire generation of young Republicans. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, Rand Paul, basically sidelined them and Bigfooted them. Biden, and to an even greater extent Hillary Clinton, largely only became leaders because there was such a gap. People don't remember, especially young ones, don't remember that during Obama's presidency, Republicans obliterated Democrats on the local level, just wiped them out. So really, Biden and Hillary Clinton were the only ones in the game. Now you could say that, oh, well, in 2020, you got Amy Klobuchar, you had Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, but all those guys, or you either had people who were a little bit older or were pretty green on the national stage, or you had really young guys like Pete Buttigieg and Julian Castro, who really were a little too inexperienced to be on there. Now what you've seen is you have a lot of these young bucks on the Republican side who are much more MAGA, who are much more ideological, and they're going to start coming up and they're going to try to set themselves up as the successor for Trump. Whereas I think what's interesting now is that because of Dobbs in the midterm and because of the Trump effect in 2018, you're going to have a large crop of governors, younger senators on the Democratic side. And it's important to remember in 2020, basically because the 2016 primary was so bitter, progressives and I guess you could say the establishment basically had a ceasefire and a truce saying we're going to set aside all of our policy differences to focus on beating Trump. Once that ends, and once Trump, whether Trump wins or loses, he's no longer, the specter of Trump no longer hangs over. And once Joe Biden is no longer, the leader of the party, those ideological differences are gonna come bubbling back up. I mean, we already see them bubbling back up on Israel. You're gonna see this kind of power struggle within the Democratic Party that you really haven't seen since, I would say, the 2008 Democratic primary, and really not since the 2000s altogether in the Democratic Party, because that's going to set out the succession rates. Yes, you have Kamala Harris, but a lot of Democratic strategists behind closed doors worry about her. You have Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, but a lot of people wonder, well, can she appeal to black voters? Can she appeal to other voters outside of it? Yes, you have someone like Raphael Warnock, but do you really want to give up a swing state? Democrats really want to give us a swing state Senate with somebody who's as good of a campaigner as Raphael Warnock? There is not going to, these are going to be legitimate policy, political fights that you're going to see. To say nothing of the fact that you're going to want to see the GOP establishment want to wrest back power, but then you have your Hawleys, your Vances, but then you also don't have, Republicans are now kind of in the same spot the Democrats were in 2016, where they don't really have somebody on the bench.
There's no bench at all. It's been wiped out.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
and the thing with the bench is, Joe Biden won because everybody kind of looked into the abyss in the Democratic primary and went, no, we're not doing this. And Rand not walked to the polls for Joe Biden.
Yes.
And when you look at the crop of folks that's going to run for the Democratic in 2028, the Illinois governor is going to run. He's got enough money; he can do it on his own.
Yeah.
You've got some real outliers. Joe Biden really does feel like the last time the progressive wing holds their nose and says, "Okay, we'll go along to get along," even though they're still the minority of the party. Sorry,
Yes.
guys, you just are.
Yeah.
They want the reins, and I don't think they're going to give them up this next time around.
No,
But they don't have anybody to take it either.
They don't have.
So what do they do?
Nobody in the Democratic Party has set up themselves as the mantle bearer of the left yet. Somebody
hold on, time out. What is left? They probably need to take one step back and go, what is this new left? Because the joke used to be the center of the Democratic Party is whatever Joe Biden said this morning. And that was before he was president. He was always the middle, right? He was the floater, right? Well, he's floated way to the left of where he started out, even during the Obama years, if you go listen. Don't they need to have a conversation of what is this new modern? Because a lot of the old stuff
of the Democratic Party, yeah.
Because you're losing a lot of the union folks to the MAGA folks. The Israel question is a real dividing point, especially places like New York, where power base of the Democratic Party for decades and centuries, really. That's a dividing issue. What is this new Democratic Party going to look like? They got to kind of figure that part out before they go forward. I mean, the Republicans got to figure out, are we going to stay Trump or are we going to, gain our minds back? That's the Democratic question, isn't it? This new Democratic Party is a whole new thing.
It is a whole new thing. Let's also not ignore the fact that they've seen lower black turnout in cities like Philadelphia and Milwaukee and Atlanta. The Democratic Party is becoming a lot whiter and becoming a lot richer and a lot more college educated than it was, in the Democratic Party that my grandmother, who adored Franklin Roosevelt, did, or my old yellow dog Democrat late grandmother on my father's side. It is a very, very different Democratic Party. It's a Democratic, so they are going to need to have those come to Jesus moments. I think that what you're going to see on the Israel thing, I think what you see now is you see some folks like Jamie Raskin and folks say, I still support Israel, but there needs to be, or Chuck Schumer say, but this right-wing racist government of Israel needs to go. I think that's going to start to be the median of where the Democratic Party is. On economics, it's going to be, I think you've seen really, even Joe Manchin supports taxing the hell out of millionaires. When it comes to you see Democrats almost universally in support of abortion rights now. Guns, they're still kind of divided on assault weapons versus background, but almost all of them support background checks. It's really good. They're going to have these really serious discussions. And on top of that, they need to discuss not only what these discussions are, but how do they get back these non-white, non-college educated voters. I mean, you know, this is like my hobby horse, that Democrats are losing Hispanic voters and they're losing college educated black voters, and they're also losing non-college educated black voters, and they also lost Asian American voters as well. So this is they're gonna need to think about simultaneously, what do we stand for and how do we get back some of these older voters.
Yeah, and demographically, we'll talk about some other time. You want to talk about some of those swinging national election, Hispanics going Republican by 20-25% and going 35-40%. There's a huge national swing that could possibly be coming in the next few years if they're not real careful.
Yeah, the Democrats are going to be in for a rude awakening. I mean, I've been saying this. I've been saying this. Democrats are in for a rude awakening if Trump on election night gains the lead in the silver state of Nevada. That's going to send a lot of people into a tizzy.
Yeah, Nevada's a complicated. I lived in Vegas for a couple of years. I got an up close and personal of the politics out there. Yeah. It's its own beast, but it's really going to be an interesting state this year. People keep an eye on that. Eric Garcia, we love talking to you. We love the insight. Real quick, let folks know what you got going on. You're writing another book. You sadist. What are you doing? What are you doing with your free? It's going to cut into your guitar playing, my friend, but writing a new book, let people know what you got going on. We're going to link to his new piece on Marjorie Taylor Greene in The Independent. Let folks know how to keep up with you.
You follow me at The Independent. We have a newsletter that comes out every weeknight inside Washington. Comes out at 6 p.m. because Ronald Reagan used to say that him and Tip O'Neill were friends at 6 p.m. So it's your nightcap for the night. We got my column at MSNBC. My book, We're Not Broken, Changing the Autism Conversation, you could buy in bookstores everywhere. I'm working on a second book about autism and masculinity. That is set to come out in January 2026. But as always, I will be, you can catch me on the campaign trail. You can always DM me, and I'll be keeping you updated. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Congress is going to be real interesting the rest of this year and an election year. So make sure you got good folks like Eric in your rotation. Buddy, I appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's end on a good note. Let's go out to Salem, Oregon. This is an AP story. We'll link to it. One of the winners of the $1.3 billion Powerball jackpot this month is an immigrant from Laos who had cancer for 8 years and had his latest chemotherapy treatment just last week. Chang Charlie Siphon, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, 46 of Portland, told a news conference held by the Oregon Lottery on Monday that he and his 37-year-old wife are taking half the money and the rest is going to a friend, Lezo Chow, 55 of the Portland suburb of Milwaukee. Chow, who had chipped in $100 to buy a batch of tickets with them. They are taking a lump sum payment, $422 million after taxes. Good work if you can get it. Quote, I will be able to provide for my family and my health, he said, adding that he'll find himself a good doctor for himself. He didn't say himself twice, did? I did, because I'm not reading well today. But anyway, back to the piece. Safian, who has 2 young children, said as a cancer patient, he wondered, quote, how am I going to have time to spend all this money? How long will I live? After they bought the shared tickets, Chow sent a photo of the ticket to Siphon and said, we're billionaires. It was a joke before the actual drawing. The next day, they won the $1 billion drawing. Chow, 55, was on her way to work when Siphon called with the news. Quote, you don't have to go to work anymore, he said. Siphon said he was born in Laos and moved to Thailand in 1987 before immigrating to the U.S. He wore a sash at the news conference, identifying himself with the Lu Mine, a Southeast Asian ethnic group with roots in southern China. Many of that ethnic group were subsistence farmer and assisted American forces during the Vietnam War, and after the conflict, thousands of them fled Thailand to avoid retribution and eventually settled in the U.S., most of them on the West Coast. Tens of thousands of these peoples live along the West Coast with sizable and active community in Portland. Siphon graduated from high school in 1996 and has lived in Portland for more than 30 years. He worked as a machinist for an aerospace company. The weeks leading up to the drawing, he wrote out the numbers for the game on a piece of paper and slept with it under his pillow. He said he prayed that he would win, saying, I need some help. I don't want to die yet unless I have done something for my family first. The winning ticket was sold in early April at a Plaid Pantry convenience store in Portland, ending a winless streak that had stretched for more than 3 months. The Oregon Lottery said it had to go through a security and vetting process before announcing the identity of the person who came forward to claim the prize. Under Oregon law, with few exemptions, lottery players cannot remain anonymous. Winners have a year to claim a prize. The jackpot had a cash value of $621 million before taxes if the winner chose to take a lump sum rather than an annuity paid over 30 years, with an immediate payout followed by 29 state annual installments. The prize is subject to federal taxes and state taxes in the state of Oregon. The $1.3 billion prize is the 4th largest Powerball jackpot in history, and the 8th largest among U.S. jackpot games of all time, according to the Oregon Lottery. The biggest ever, $2.4 billion in California in 2022. So there you go. Immigrant, successful man, cancer survivor that's battling it, won a little extra money. Good for him, and he did the right thing, taking care of the person, helped him buy his tickets. A little good news after a long day of talking about Congress and the hot mess in Washington, D.C. We looked to the left coast for a little bit of good news. That'll do it for Heard Tell. We appreciate you giving us the most precious thing you have, your time and listening. Love to hear from you. Make sure you're following us however you're listening on whatever podcasting platform, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're even on some over in India that I can't even pronounce. You folks listening in India, we see you, appreciate you. Wherever you are, whoever you're with, whoever you're doing things with, we surely appreciate your time. And until we talk to you again on Heard Tell, we hope you're well. We hope you're well fed. We'll talk to you again soon for more Heard Tell. All the music on Heard Tell is provided under a Creative Content license from monstercat.com.
Somos la máquina.
Get Get an 11% rebate at Menards. Rust-Oleum Stops Rust Custom 5-in-1 Spray Paint lets you choose from 5 spray patterns with a twist of the dial. It protects indoor and outdoor metal and wood projects for long-lasting results and is available in more than 40 colors. Get started on your painting project at Menards, #1 in customer satisfaction among home improvement retailers according to J.D. Power. For more information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Save big money at Menards.
What makes for a great vacation? Depends on who you ask. Are you looking to get away or bring everyone together? Do you want to get outside and play or see a play at the plate? Fortunately, however you operate, I'm the destination you've been looking for. The name's Missouri, but you can call me Mo. And I have just one question. What's your MO? Come see me at visitmo.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.